There any and all questions related to Judaism, Christianity, Messianic Judaism, and how they all blend together. Those of you who are here all know how this began. For those of you online, the class largely began as a way to answer very basic questions for the Messianic faith, and gradually has over time turned into a Q&A for anything related to the Bible at all and the world around us. So we take questions, we answer questions, and we hopefully get good answers. Sometimes we are just honest and say we don't know, or we'll answer that at another time. So before we begin, any prayer requests from the room? Donna.
Robin, I talked yesterday, a friend of hers from work by the name of
Bonnie.
Committed suicide on Thursday evening. So just prayer for her, Bonnie's family.
Okay. Sam, I saw your hand.
Ask for Joe and Susie and Susie's mom, and also to the my father's arrows orphanage and group home. Just need prayers. They need more workers and just prayers for the kids.
And for Joanne.
I thought you did that,
Yeah.
Joanne.
No, I knew that was just a default at this point. And your mom is not feeling well, right?
Yeah, she's having some arthritis issues today, so she gets some relief from that.
Jerry.
BTS?
BTS, I know. We are. For those of you who don't know, Monday begins VTS, so it is like a fever dream around here for the next, I don't know, 100 plus hours.
Birthday tomorrow.
Yes, by the way, there is a work day tomorrow, so if you can make it, there will be something for you to do. There is always something, whether it's cutting out shapes or gluing things or just running things back and forth. There's always something for anyone of any capability to do.
Also, money donations to help with the food.
Yes, and I'm going to talk about that during service. Yes, Frank.
I have a son that's on his way to Kansas this morning. He's traveling mercy.
Okay, Fred's son, Traveling Mercy. Speaking of Traveling Mercies, be praying for Robin, Jeannie, Marilyn, and Jennifer, and Lenore, Orlando. They'll all be traveling tomorrow back from the MJAA Messiah Conference, and that's, some of them are flying, some of them are driving. It's, trips regardless. Ivan.
I got a co-worker's wife fell and broke her kneecap. Her name is
L'Oreal broke kneecap.
And
Ouch.
pray for Kate.
Kate.
My daughter.
Okay. Yes.
There's a great many suffering addicts and alcoholics in Pensacola.
Yes.
We offered up a prayer.
Yes. Those who are suffering with addiction and trying to break free from addiction. Jackson.
Baseball coach just had a baby.
Oh, mazel tov to your baseball coach, and pray for them.
I'd like to ask for continued prayers for my aunt. I wasn't able to see her last weekend because halfway up there, she called and said her daughter had COVID. Well, 2 more family members came down with it, and I think she did. She was tested once and refused to be tested again.
Yeah.
And just for their recovery, and she's still struggling with the loss of her daughter, who we think now passed of COVID as well.
Okay.
My aunt's name is Georgia. I call her Gigi.
To be praying for Marquita's Gigi
Yes.
and her family. Yeah. And speaking of COVID, be praying for those of you who know him, Michael Zapata. He visits here at least once a month during the High Holy Days. He visits, during those. He watches us faithfully from Panama City Beach area, and he has COVID right now. So be mild symptoms, but still be praying that he gets over it quickly. And he's hoping to be able to go back to work on Monday, so I think he's on the tail end of it, but we'll still be praying for him as well. Did I see another hand, Sam?
I just want to give out a word of praise to everyone in this congregation. I want y'all to know how much we love y'all and thank y'all for all that y'all are doing for me and Joanne. I'm so glad that the Lord has led me here. Y'all have been such a blessing to me, and thank y'all so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all.
Sam just wants all of us to know how grateful him and Joanne are for doing exactly what we should be doing without thanks, regardless. So, but we are more than happy to do it, Sam. We're here for you, and that goes for everyone. We're here. We try to maintain that we are a family of families. We don't just say that to say that. We try to mishpocha. We try to practice it with all that we do. So, which includes the bad parts, which means all the arguing and everything. We try not to do too much of that, though. But anyone, any others? Okay. Be praying for Abigail and Levi. Abigail is only a little ways away from having a baby, so there will be a new Zamstein, and they're moving to Nebraska, which it's. The other side of the world. I mean, Nebraska's practically Tarshish, in our circle of thinking. I mean, you could actually fit the Mediterranean in between here and Nebraska, and it would still have room to spare. So it definitely is on the other side of the world. But it's a great opportunity for Levi. He's practically been invited to start the robotics program at a university, which I mean that's amazing. Like, how many people get to be the beginning of something at a school, especially something like robotics. That's just cool. So, a couple names you may have heard kind of floating around. Be praying for Sam Hamby. Sam is the gentleman and his family. He's the gentleman who will be taking over the Rome congregation. So that's where Rabbi is today. He's kind of, because this is Abigail and Levi's last Shabbat at Rome. So he's kind of helping to facilitate for my military folks, the change of command. So Abigail and Levi are transitioning out, and Sam and his family are transitioning in. So be praying for him and his family that they would just have an easy transition into leading this community. Sam's a great guy, great leader, great teacher, and so he'll be a huge blessing to that community, and we fully expect to see that community grow with God's hand on it. I'll be praying for Toby. Toby and his family are just moved down to Daphne, Alabama. He is Rabbi David's new assistant rabbi. So Rabbi David's, moving ahead into that. They're able to afford, I guess, with both space and time and energy and money, the ability to have an assistant rabbi, which is a great thing to have. And so be praying for them. They just moved down. They're still moving in, but hopefully we will all be able to meet them very soon. So I think that's all I have. So anyone else before I go? Okay. Heavenly Father, thank you for your Shabbat. We love being able to gather together and to worship together, to pray together, to lift up your name. We also love to fellowship, Lord, and just to rejuvenate at the end of the week and receive the strength and encouragement that is so desperately needed from our brothers and sisters in Messiah. Lord, you give that strength, you give that spirit, and we ask that we would all leave today ready to walk in a world that oftentimes is so opposed to your ways and to your desires. And Lord, we ask that we would have the strength to carry those out each and every day. Father, we want to pray for all of those who are sick and injured and hurting. All the names we have mentioned would be healed, Lord. They would just receive the touch from you and be healed, whether it be from sickness or injuries or surgeries, that they would be healed and restored. And those who belong here, we would see them among us again. And those who are part of families outside of here, Lord, that their families would see them again back to full strength. Father, we want to pray for all those who are traveling this weekend, those who will be on the road, those who will be in the air. We ask you to cover them with your hand and bless them with a safe journey. Bring them back to wherever home is, whether that is here or in the many other congregations that have people traveling this week from Messiah Conference. We ask you to be with all of them as they travel back home. Continue to be with Messiah Conference today, Lord, on their Shabbat service, and that today will be a blessing for all those in attendance. We ask that today would be a blessing for all in attendance here, that it would be worshipful, that it would be intentional, that we would all have kavanah as we focus on you, that you would be our portion, you would be our focus, Lord. We ask for all of this and more. And Father, we want to pray for VTS this week. Please be with our staff, be with those who are leading and volunteering and directing VTS, that there would be no stress, Lord, that there would just be an increasing feeling of joy and excitement for being able to not just put together VTS, but to lead the children through it and to see them encouraged and to see them learn and to see them grow this week, and that we would return them back to their families firmly exhausted, and that when we get them back the next day, they'd be ready to go again, and that their families would, even if they don't attend here already, would even consider attending here, Lord, based on how we treat their children. We ask all of these things in the name of Yeshua, our King. Amen. All right, so I only have a couple questions today. Actually, I don't even have a couple. I think I have one. I might have a couple. So I'm relying on all of you to kind of help boost the numbers today. So the first one comes from Nathan. It says, "Hi, Rabbi. I live in Idaho and recently found Bradam and have started listening to some of your teachings. I have a question about tzitzit that I was hoping you could address either by email or in the Foundation's discussion. Are we commanded to wear tzitzit today? It seems to me to be somewhat unclear, as the text says that it is to be worn in the four corners of our garments. But most garments these days don't have four corners. As a follow-up to that, if we are commanded to wear them, do they need to be visible? Some translations seem to suggest that they don't need be. Others suggest maybe they do. Hoping you could clarify." So we all know that the commandment for tzitzit appears in Numbers, and it does say it is supposed to appear on the corners of your garment. You're supposed to have fringes on the corners of your garment with a thread of blue through it. And the Hebrew word for that color is the word techelet. Y'all behave. So the Hebrew word for the blue color, the blue thread, is the word techelet, and it's kind of like a royal blue. It's not just like a dark blue or a navy blue. They're actually, and I'll get into that in a second. But anyway, so yes, we are instructed to wear tzitzit today. That command doesn't go away. The whole thing about the law will not pass away until all things are fulfilled. Well, not all things are fulfilled, so we're going to run with the assumption that tzitzit are still to be worn today. And that's not just us. Even Orthodox Judaism maintains that tzitzit are to be worn, and you'll see them wearing tzitzit. They are to be worn in the four corners of your garment. So typically, yes, and I know most garments don't have four corners. That's just so what the way around that is a lot of people will buy four-cornered garments, undershirts, somewhere over. Here at services, you'll see a lot of the men wearing the prayer shawls, the talit gadols, the large talits, and they all have four corners, and that is a garment of praise. It's a garment meant for worship, and it has tzitzit in each of the corners. So those are the ways that people do wear tzitzit and kind of fulfill the idea of having them on four corners of the garment. I had a friend one time, a missionary friend, who was, they were joking, kind of in the back corner of the room. The kids that sit on the back of the bus? Well, this is what happens when you grow up. They just sit in the back corner of the room next to the window. And so they were, and I'm not talking about any of you sitting by the window, but they were cracking jokes in the back room, and one of them was a little heavier set, and the other one wasn't, and they were talking about the four corners and how the garment fits over the body, and my friend looked at his other friend. He said, well, Jim, this commandment doesn't apply to you because you're round. and he just cracked up and started dying laughing, and we're like, no, it's the garment, it's not the person. So don't. So that people will wear four-cornered garments in order to fulfill that commandment. Some people do wear them on belt loops. I've not, and I've seen some I've seen some arguments for why, because it is on the outside, and some people do like 2 on the front, 2 on the back, so that there's 4 spaces. Because again, the corners doesn't always necessarily mean literally corners in the Bible. Now, this commandment, because the clothing was corners, it's kind of what it is inferring. But remember, when you talk about the 4 corners of the world doesn't have corners. It's east, west, north, and south aren't corners, because a corner ends. You run into something when you hit a corner, but the north, south, east, and west keep going. You could forever go north, but they're considered corners in the world. Yes, Fred?
Are they worn by the Jewish nation as well as Gentiles?
It's worn by anyone who's in a part of Israel.
As part of Israel,
Yeah.
it's commonwealth.
Well, are you talking about today?
Huh?
Are you talking about today or biblically?
Right now.
Biblically, if you're a part of Israel, I would say you should wear them. Yeah, Gentiles included.
What about the statement of 10 Gentiles hanging on the seat?
There is a prophetic statement in Zechariah, Ezekiel, one of the two. I always forget which one it is. Zechariah, where it says that in the end times, 10 Gentiles will grab hold of the corner garment of a Jew and say, "Let us go with you, for here God is with you." And so that's what they're referring to is the tzitzit. They're referring to the fringe, the corner garment, and that's just it's just a way of saying holding on to and saying, "Let us come with you." I don't think they're going to have an identity problem, and at least they should not have an identity problem. Now, one of the interesting things about that is in the Messianic movement, the greater Messianic movement. Particularly on the Messianic Jewish side, there tends to be this, every now and then, you'll come across an attitude that, maybe Gentiles shouldn't be as involved. It's like, well, prophetically, Gentiles are going to outnumber you 40-1, in your own congregations, just based on that prophecy. So the idea that Gentiles won't be a part or shouldn't be a part is biblically absurd. So yeah, I like that. I like that prophetic image, and that's why I know Rabbi David wears his tzitzit out, sort of as a declaration of that prophetic. Like, I need people to see my tzitzit so they can grab hold of my corners and follow me. I'm Rabbi Eric's student, so I follow him, and I tuck mine in. I used to wear them out years ago, but now I keep them tucked in, and both are halachically correct. You can wear them either tucked in or you can wear them out. Yeah.
So if you wear them in, how can they grab?
Huh? Well, they should know. That's right. But they should be able to see. Yeah. But Skip has no problem with that. So that would be weird. But no, the people should be able to tell based on who you are and your behavior. And so and if you're not Jewish, that doesn't apply to you. I'm kidding. Remember, it's a Jew that it's wearing and they're grabbing to. No, I'm kidding. They should be able to tell who you are and by your behavior that God is with you and that you're walking with God. The tzitzit is just an extra step. And even if you're wearing a talit, if you have tzitzit on a talit gadol or a shawl here at synagogue and they come to visit synagogue, they can say the same thing here. They can be one of the people that come up to you at the end of service and they can ask you the weird questions and stuff and leave me alone. I'm kidding. Sorry, Barry, I saw your hand first.
Actually, I think so many things in the scriptures are literal and metaphorical. So I think
Yes.
that's probably a metaphorical statement.
Yeah.
Describing how that the Gentiles may grab
Yes.
with your lifestyle, your God,
Yes.
your way of living.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see 40 men grabbing hold of the tassels of one man all around him. I think that'd be interesting for sure, but I don't think that's what we'll see. Sam?
Speaking of 60s, and it also referred to in Leviticus chapter 20, it talks about 37, I believe it starts there.
Regarding...
Maybe
Numbers 15, yeah.
yeah, so it's talking about tassels.
Yeah. Frank, hold on. Sorry, Joe. Frank.
Oh, no, it's just to add, like the woman with the blood issue.
Yeah.
At 12 years, she grabbed the whole
Yep.
tassels of Yeshua.
Yep.
Okay.
Joe.
Ivan has his.
Oh, sorry, Ivan.
I just want to get this out. I want to just praise God. He's blessed me with a job here in Pensacola.
Oh, Baruch Hashem. Praise God.
One more day.
Good. No, that's awesome. That's great. Awesome. Yes, Donna.
I know that there's some teaching that excludes women from this.
Yes, there is some teaching that excludes women from this.
But that's not what we heard.
The word says Bnei Israel, children of Israel. I understand the logic used by the rabbinic community to exclude women. I don't agree with the argument. However, I think it is definitely more imperative for men to wear them. And it has to do with a whole idea of covering. So, husbands, fathers, if you're not wearing tzitzit, you need to wear tzitzit. If you're walking this walk, you need to wear tzitzit. That's in order to be that covering that you're supposed to be over your wife and your children. So, women can wear them. Now, that being said, everything should be done in decency and in order. Everything should be done correctly. There is at least one time a month where women should not wear them, and they should be put aside. But that's not for everyone. That's for typically the younger women who are still giving birth and able to give birth. But again, that has to do with the cleanliness issue, and we do try to do things right. And their garment, remember, it's a garment declaring a set apartness, a separatedness to God. And so that's why the talit gadols, we wear them. You go into the bathroom, you take it off, because it's not supposed to be something that you're dragging along with you. You're not supposed to be dragging on the ground. It's something that's supposed to be regarded as something you wear when you go before the presence of the King. Yes, Sam.
I just wanted to say, this is more of a statement than a question, but I wanted to say this is something that convicted me when I first started coming here about wearing cleats. And it goes back to chapter 16, Timothy 13 of TLV.
What book? Luke?
Yep, Luke. And it says, one who is faithful in the smallest matters is also faithful in much. And just that right there tells me that, okay, a lot of people, I know a lot of people that profess to be believers and say, well, what's the big deal about wearing
Yeah.
seats, that's
Yeah.
that's silly, and it's like, but it's not. I mean,
Yeah.
because it commands us, we do the little things.
Yep.
We're supposed to be faithful in doing the bigger things.
Yep. Yeah, Sam's saying that the Bible reminds us that he is faithful in the little things will be charged, will be given the big things and may be able to be responsible for the big things. And tzitzit are a little thing, literally, but also figuratively. It's a string of blue attached to a fringe on your garment. It's not something that we would deem as that important. But again, and the more you study, the words of God and even the teachings of Yeshua, you begin to see that your desire and ability to do the little things do impact the desire and the ability to do the big things. For example, how many people do you know, missionaries, and people who do really wonderful things for the Lord, they be like, I would die for the Lord. And a lot of them have. But it's like, if you're saying, I don't want to do that, that's bacon, for example. I don't want to give up bacon. It's too hard. It's like, if bacon is too hard for you, how are you going to die for God when that moment comes? Not that they can't. I'm not saying that God gives that strength when that time comes. But there's, giving up something like bacon is a lot easier, or should be a lot easier, than dying for your beliefs. Yes?
Now, to me, it's a commandment, just like tithing.
Yeah.
And when you tithe, you see the blessing of God in your life.
Yeah.
So all of the commandments are supposed to bring blessing to our life.
Yes, all the commandments bring blessing. And tzitzit are a reminder. It's something you see. It's something that it's clearly visible. When you're if you wear them on the outside, and and even when they're tucked in, I do enough moving around and everything where they become visible throughout the day. And when I put them on and take them off, so it's it reminds me enough. And there's actually there's actually a good argument that the greatest safeguard that it has for what it guards against is sexual immorality. And there's a tractate in the Talmud that talks about and again, this is just a story, but there's, a disciple of a rabbi was about to do something he should not have with a prostitute, and as he was getting into her chambers, he saw his tzitzit and repented that moment. And that's, it's probably a little exaggerated of a story, but that is what they're supposed to be for. They're supposed to be, you're going about life, and then all of a sudden you see it, and you go, oh yes, okay, I should not be here. Or let me change my mind around real quick before I go any further. Craig, yes, I'm sorry.
A very controversial take on this.
Yeah.
What is your feeling about gender-appropriate tzitzit? Or talits?
I think tallit should be gender appropriate. I think women wearing tallit, especially gadol prayer shawls, they should look feminine. Men wearing them, they should look masculine. And there are the traditional look and color is sort of a white with black stripes, white with blue stripes, and those are understood to be the masculine colors, the masculine look. And there are, for example, at the Messiah conference this past week, I saw these shirts and clothing that were clearly made for women. Like, they were beautiful colors, well painted, well made, and it was obvious this is for. And I liked them. Like, I looked at them. These are beautiful, and I bought my wife one, but they're not for men to wear. It wouldn't be. So you can still regard something as comely, something as attractive and worthy of spending money on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you should wear it. Yes. Before we go, did anyone have anything else about this before we move forward? Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the techelet thing because it got mentioned. So it's interesting, that the techelet dye for years was thought they didn't know what it was, because you read about blue and purple in the Bible tend to be very close. They tend not to know exactly what it would have looked like. Whether sometimes blue is mentioned, it's really purple. Sometimes purple is mentioned, it's really blue. They recently, I'm talking within the past maybe 20 years, so within my lifetime, they had found archaeological sites next to the Mediterranean that contained large piles of these snail shells. And in Israel, a snail's not kosher to eat, so why would you be harvesting and killing all of these snails? Well, they discovered that this species of snail, when you crack open the shell, the blood, when it oxidizes, it turns into a very bright royal blue. And it seemed to match up with some other records they had about the dye that they used to produce for the techelet. And so in recent years, they have begun dyeing strings for tying tzitzit with the techelet color. And so it's beginning to pick up more popularity in the Orthodox community, because they didn't know for years. They just didn't put anything. It was just white. They just used white tassels because they were more about, we want to do it right, so if we don't know what to do, we're just not going to do it. And so it's been picking up speed in the recent years to put techelet into the tzitzit. And it is a pretty color. It's expensive. It's like, I think for a set for 4, it's like $30 or so, and it's just some string. But there's only a handful of people who actually do the dyeing process. But so if you want to see that color, what it looks like, if you can just Google techelet, and I would Google TEKHELET, I think, and that's just the transliteration. But that's the color that it would have most likely looked like, that they would have had in them. So, other questions? Because I'm out. Marquita.
I have observed whenever the Torah is taken out of the case and it's opened, that when this gentleman sits down and then 3 men walk over there and they put the cover over it.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not just be me, but every time I have seen the front of it is facing the person holding
Mm-hmm.
the Torah, and then it's turned back around so it's facing us.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
No.
I just, I'm wondering if there was a reason, because I'm thinking, why don't they just put it down where it faces us?
It has to do wherever the clasps are. So wherever the front of the Torah is, the front of the thing goes, and more often than not, the front of the Torah. Marquita was asking the question, why do we, when we cover the Torah with its dressing, the front of the dressing always seems to face the person sitting down, holding it as we dress it, and then we turn it around. It's simply because that's where the front of the Torah is. And if it was turned the other way, then likely we would turn it the other way. Because, and you have to remember, traditionally, we haven't been doing this largely because our scroll is so old, and we are going to look into buying a new one, hopefully doing some fundraising this next Torah cycle to commission a brand new Torah scroll. So we'll have one that's a little bit newer. The parchment will be a little bit newer. But because it's older, we don't typically know when Joe lifts it up, it's already closed. What you normally do is you take it up open. And actually, I did that my first time here reading from the scroll. And I was used to doing that. It was just normal for me. So I went to go pick it up, and I did not realize at the time that was not what Rabbi wanted. So he just kind of whispered to me, he's like, don't make me regret this. And so, but that was fine. I mean, the Torah scroll is still intact, so obviously it was fine. But still, normally, and you would lift it up and turn it around and hold it with the words facing the audience. And so the front is facing the person already, so they put it back down, roll it up, and they would dress it. So, yeah. Yeah, and it is fun. Like, it is, like, I have to say, like, when it comes to reading from the scroll, that is probably the most fun thing, when you've got, that open to that section, and you get to show everybody what you just read from, and there it is, and it's fun. So no, there's no. Well, I mean, I've lifted 183-year-old Torah scrolls up like that before, and they're fine. Like, look, when you spend time with them, you learn how to be careful with them. And I had worked with artifacts in museums before, so that kind of helped. I kind of knew, like, you want to have kid gloves, but you also want to be able to, like, because they're not light. Torah scrolls, easily like 30 pounds, 30 plus pounds. So, no, but there's no nothing special. I kind of wish there was, but no, it's.
I just wondered if it was a tradition. It makes sense if when you flip it or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. At first, I thought you were going to ask why did two people do the? Is it like when they're holding up Moses' arms? Is there two of them on the other side? I'm like, no, I kind of wish that was the reason, but no, it's just ease of access is really the only reason. So, other questions? There's got to be some. Tim.
Can you explain, there's a Jewish synagogue in southern Florida, ironically with the name Lador, generation to generation.
Lador.
They're claiming that they're filing a lawsuit against the Florida, saying that it's Jewish law that abortion is allowed.
Yes.
Which is ludicrous, of course. But do you understand, or can you explain
The argument.
what their argument is?
Yes.
Their faulty argument?
Yeah. So Tim was saying there's a synagogue in southern Florida that is filing.
What was the question?
I'm saying the question.
I can't hear you either.
I'm saying the question. There we go.
You're not going to pass out, are you?
No. So Tim was asking there's a synagogue in southern Florida that's filing a lawsuit. I can't remember if it's against Florida or the Supreme Court. Is it Florida? They're basically saying that it's according to Jewish halakha, abortion is allowed according to Jewish law, and so it's a violation of our religious rights to do that. It's not. There is an argument that they're drawing from in the Talmud, which is actually it's a bad argument because it's it's a whole out of context, a very out of context scenario. So there's a discussion in the Talmud about. It has nothing to do with abortion. See, that's the funny thing is it has nothing to do with abortion or termination of life. There's a argument in the Talmud discussing, when is a woman, when is a daughter of Levi considered unclean and can no longer participate in the eating of the daily offerings. the daily, the bread that was given to the Levites, the meat that was given to the Levites, because that was given to the whole family. They performed the services in the tabernacle, and then they would take what was given to them home, and the families would eat of it. And so it's talking about, well, if you're pregnant, you don't know, you can't eat of it when you're pregnant. And so, but when you know you're pregnant, because you don't typically start to show until, I don't know, 3 months in, really, a lot of time. So that's a long time. And so one rabbi said, and that's all the Talmud really is Rabbi so-and-so said this, Rabbi so-and-so said that. And so this one rabbi says, well, it doesn't really count as a life until, for the first 40 days or whatever. And so, then, so she should be able to partake of it, up until that point. Well, then immediately after that, and that's what they use. That's where the argument comes from. But immediately the next rabbi disagrees with him and says, if that was true, what are we going to do? Are we going to retroactively, take away the food that she's eaten from? Like, can we somehow make it undo what she's eaten within those 40 days? So no, that's nonsense. And so they're taking a portion of a discussion that actually is refuted by the other rabbis surrounding him, to make that into an argument for, Yes. So anyway, yes. So what's even funnier is if we wanted to hypothetically say, okay, yes, you are correct. This rabbi is correct. 40 days, it doesn't count as a life for 40 days. That's what, 5 weeks? 5.5 weeks or something like that. So even by their own argument, you would be able to say Florida's 15 weeks right now? Something like that. So Florida,
Judge upheld it. It's up to 24.
24. Okay, so it's at 24 weeks right now. If, they were to win this lawsuit, someone could come along and say, well, if it is a religious protection, that it does not start until 40 days, they could push the argument that be case law. They could draw it back to 5.5 weeks from 24, which is a significant number. But again, that's their argument is absurd and is again refuted by at least the rabbi following him, if not multiple, I believe, in that discussion. It's a pretty long, lengthy discussion.
The reason I bring that up is because it's all over the newspapers.
Yes.
Claiming and obviously liberal.
Yes. Well, newspapers don't know what they're talking about. Yeah.
This is Judaism.
Yeah. No, it's not Judaism. Yeah.
That's one of the saddest facts of the whole.
Yeah,
thing.
and that's the thing is the newspapers don't know what they're talking about. Journalists don't know what they're talking about. Well, and the thing is, you have to remember, journalism is largely sound bites. It's it's quick. It's not none of these journalists, I doubt, are trying to understand Talmud and a discussion had in Talmud. And again, this is a Reform synagogue, I'm pretty sure. They don't ever want anything really to do with Talmud until they need something to back, their position, which doesn't actually even back their position which again, had they bothered to pay attention in yeshiva, they would have learned that this is not how Talmud works, and that these discussions are ongoing, and that you can't just stop with a paragraph when the very next rabbi refutes it. And again, Talmud is where halakha comes from. It is not Jewish halakha. Halakha is drawn from Talmud. Yes, Fred.
How did they handle the scripture where God said, I knew you while you were still in the womb?
Yeah, I think they ignore a lot of things. Like they ignored the rest of that discussion. Yeah, like they ignored the rest of the discussion with that tractate. Yes, Craig.
I'm looking here at Sinai Temple with Rabbi David Wolf said, based on the Torah passage of Exodus 21, 22, 23, Jewish law does not consider abortion equivalent to murder.
No.
Yeah, I was reading. I went and that passage has nothing to do with
No.
it.
No. In which that's the law of is it the
Pulling it up.
okay. Let me know when you get there. I forget the tractate. I think it starts with a T or an H. But no, and I knew it 2 weeks ago, but I don't know it now.
I got it.
Yes.
Doesn't it prove in the New Testament that when John the Baptist, 6 months in Elizabeth's womb, jumped and left inside of his mother's
Yes.
womb, and Yeshua had only been inside of Mary for just a few days.
Yep.
Doesn't that prove that?
In our eyes, it does. Yes.
Conception?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have to be convinced of that.
Oh yes. Yeah, Craig, is this Exodus? Yeah, Exodus 21.
22.
Exodus 21:22. If men fight and hit a pregnant woman so that her child is born early, yet no harm follows, the one who hit her is to be strictly fined. According to what the woman's husband demands of him, he must pay as the judges determine. So yeah, it's the life of the child is considered a life in the womb.
It doesn't even say if the baby's born, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's 23 that says life for life or death.
Yeah, if any harm follows, you are to penalize life for life. So, but yeah, again, there's a lot of, and you have to remember, with Reform, I mean, remember that Reform Judaism is Judaism culture. It's the culture of Judaism, and it's without wanting to be orthodox. Whereas Reconstructionist Judaism is culture of Judaism with the Orthodox culture, but they don't want God. And it's not like it's not. I don't want to call them atheists necessarily, but they don't. God has nothing to do with it. And Reform. You can be an atheist in the Reform in the Reform world, and you continue to practice the traditions, just as Native American tribes continue to meet and practice like powwows and many of their traditions. But that's all it is for them is culture, and for the Reform is the same thing. It's just all it is culture. Has nothing to do with God. Has nothing to do with righteousness. So that's that. Yes, Bobsy.
Do you mind explaining what the two-house teaching is about?
Yeah.
3 minutes. Do I mind explaining the two-house? Bobsy was asking, do I mind explaining what the two-house teaching is about? Well, it's not so much a coffee question, it's just not a 3-minute question. And largely, and I'm only, it's difficult now because there's so many different wings of it. But the original wing of the two-house movement was really just a very racist idea. And it was the idea that, if you are, what happened was, there were, early in the Messianic Jewish movement, back when Messianic Judaism was kind of, the modern Messianic movement was starting back again. It was a Jewish thing, much like in Yeshua's day with the apostles. But you had Gentiles, as always, you have Gentiles who come on and say, we want your God. And, well, there were a lot of Jewish communities, Messianic Jewish communities, that did not care for that. And it basically created a bit of animosity between the two groups. And so you had, the argument was, okay, if you are a Gentile who wants to keep these things, you must be part of the lost tribes. Like, you must have Israelite blood somewhere. And it's like, well, biblically, that's just not accurate. We have Gentiles from Moab and Canaan who joined with Israel. So, and they had no blood relation to Israel whatsoever. So, it's a faulty idea. And what it does is it makes God out to be a liar. That God says there will be Gentiles who will come up to my mountain and worship in the end times. There will be, all, and not just the end times, but throughout, and then into the kingdom, into the Messianic era. And so when you remove the idea that none of the nations will be a part of this, it makes God out to be a liar. And it's and for that reason, I'm against it completely and 100%. And that's why. It's wrong, and it started with bad fruit, and all it's done has produced bad fruit for the past 70 years ish now. So, it's not good to have a whole lot to do with that. So,